What's the most fun elite spec after Visions of Eternity launched? This is the question I want to answer today in this video, in what else than another tier list. I made a tier list about what is the most fun elite spec like 2 weeks ago, before the Visions of Eternity elite specs released, and now I want to go back there and update it. This is the whole idea. So I want to show how much I actually like the new specs and where I would put it in comparison to the old specs, after playing quite a lot of the new specs in all game modes. So with that much said, as always, special shout out to all my tier supporters that help me keep the lights on. I'm Mesmer, and now without much further ado, let's jump straight in. I want to mention this is my subjective opinion on that. You cannot rate fun in any objective way in my opinion, so this is my take on the matter. Let me know your take in the comments down below. I'm very interested to see if you agree with me or if you completely disagree, but this is my opinion. And with that much said, let's jump straight in. So you can see here I have 5 tiers. We have the S tier to B tier, makes sense, a lot of normal tiers. We have the baseline and we have D tier. Baseline, I put all the core classes, as in the other tier list as well, because I think it's very hard to objectively or even subjectively rate how good a core class is, because it's way more about class fantasy, how you like it and stuff like that. I will not take into account how strong a specific spec is, by the way. So currently some specs like Evoker, like Ritualist are crazy overpowered in all game modes. So this is just like my opinion on how fun they are to play. I take not into account how strong they are in that regard. Tier lists about that will come out very soon as well. I just rate the elite specs in comparison to the core class. And some specs are way better than the core class, some specs are just not that much better, and some spec might even be worse than the core class because the mechanic is really clunky or not fun. So with that much said, let's put in the stuff that we actually had last time. This is the tier list that we had at the end of the last video. I will probably adjust one thing that I definitely wanted to adjust after I read all the comments, and you had some good arguments that some specs are more fun or less fun that I actually saw here, put it here. So one thing I want to adjust is definitely Bladesword, definitely has to go in A tier. Why is that? Because Bladesword is a spec that has very unique mechanics and it's very fun to theory craft around when you should use it, in which encounter, how you should play it, and it's very unique. It makes Warrior definitely completely different, and in my opinion it's definitely fun to craft around it, and I personally just rated it low because I think the utility skills and traits are not that interesting, but the profession mechanic itself has to be an A tier, to be honest, because of that. And also one common criticism was that my A tier is too big, which is fine. It's a fair point. You could make an A+ tier or maybe like a C tier in between B and baseline if you wanted to. But personally, I think like it's very hard to make distinctions in the A tier because they are somewhat close, all of the specs. But I stick to my opinion, of course, to put Viva, Tempest, Holosmith, Firebrand, Chronomancer, Mirage, Reaper and Spectre in S tier. That's just my really highest like rated classes. I will leave them in there for now. So let's go to the new specs now. That's then really interesting part. Let's start with something easy. Let's talk about Galeshot. Galeshot, in my opinion, is a spec that I already mentioned in like the beta. It fits the perfect ranger archer fantasy. It's really good. It's really nice in that. It doesn't fill a lot of different roles, but what it fills is a DPS spec. It's a quick DPS or something, and it's really fun. It has a lot of multi-hits. It's really nice from range. It's fun in all game modes. I played it a lot. It's really, really fun to play and really fast-paced action. And yes, it might not be like currently the most broken one, but like I said, I will not rate the strength. So in terms of fun, easy S tier for me. Like it has to be S tier. Absolutely, it's really good. I have to say one of my favorite ranger specs, if not my favorite ranger spec right now, is definitely Galeshot, which is good. They definitely nailed it here, I would say. Let's go to the next one directly because I don't have that much more to say about Galeshot. It's just really good. Next one would be Amalgam. I think Amalgam is like, some people hate it because it's just like feels from the gameplay loop a little bit close to Scrapper. Some people love it. I personally am somewhere in the middle. I would say it's very fun to play. I can see the argument that it feels like a little bit like a Scrapper, especially if you play it like a power Amalgam. But I think the uniqueness and how the attacks look and stuff like that, especially the lead skill, is like awesome. I just like I press that every time. It's so fun to use. And I don't know, the traits and just the build crafting, theory crafting, I have to say it is S tier for me. It has to be S tier. It's just so good. It really is. Definitely a really fun spec, awesome design, really good, and needs some changes in some particular areas in terms of like balance, but I think the fun aspect definitely there. And while we are already at the medium armor classes, let's stick with them. Let's talk about Antiquary. So I was always someone that said the roleplay of Antiquary is like too goofy, I don't like it, I think it's doesn't fit Thief that well. But leaving that like out, I personally think the gameplay loop is actually surprisingly fun. It really is. The traits are amazing. It's very unique. You can play power or Conduit. You can even play now Alacrity, DPS. It's surprisingly good. It's really overpowered, but it's also very fun. I really think the loop is very fun. So if you take away the goofiness and just think that I don't care about the roleplay aspect, I think it deserves definitely a high A tier. And it still has some issues, and that's why it cannot go higher than A tier for me, because it still, some things are a little bit clunky. That's just why it's not perfectly in S tier and fun. But to be honest, if they fix that, I have to say it might even go in S tier. I'm not joking. It's really fun to play. It's not a spec that works in all game modes very well, but I think it's surprisingly fun to play. That's why it's an A tier for now. That's the medium armor classes. Before I go to the next one, I want to mention, if you like tier lists like that, be sure to subscribe. We have way more coming up like that. Not only subjective takes, but of course also objective DPS tier lists. We have also solo build tier lists coming up, so be sure to subscribe for that. And of course, if you like this video, be sure to leave a like. But now let's talk about the heavy armor classes. The heavy armor classes are very interesting. Let's start with Conduit. I think Conduit for me, that might be one of my first really hot takes here. I think Conduit for me doesn't feel as fun as people promised it after the press release, and they said, oh my god, they made a big rework to it. I think it still misses something. I really think so. It is definitely for me one of the weakest specs in the entire like expansion release. It is like a core Revenant. It has some interesting mechanics, but the changes to it doesn't make it that fun. I think the Conduit build is very fun in PvE, but it's just because the damage numbers are that high, and in general Conduit Revenant specs feel very fun to play. I really like Conduit Renegade, for example. So it's like, it doesn't really make a difference that it's Conduit or Renegade. It's just a Conduit Revenant, and that's what's fun. So I think for me, easy B tier. It's better than a core Revenant because it has an interesting mechanic with the affinity, with the cosmic wisdom and stuff like that, but definitely not as good. Low B tier for sure. I think it needs some more help. It's not perfectly fun in my opinion. That's my take, yeah. But like I said, let me know your takes on that in the comments down below. Next up for the heavy Argon classes, we have Paragon. Paragon is very weird. Paragon is a spec that is by design very dull in terms of the animations and stuff like that. It's just shouting all the time. That's it. So I would say if you are someone that likes flashy stuff, then that's not for you. But in terms of like power level, it's very good. I don't rate power level here, but I would say it feels so snappy to play, you know, it's so snappy. You have like your F skills, you have your burst skills, you recharge them very fast. You know, it's very reactive as well. I really like this gameplay loop. So I would say that might be my first really hot take, but I think Paragon for me is like a high A tier because it is snappy and fun to play. But the problem is, and that's the big problem here, is it doesn't have a good DPS spec. I think the DPS spec is not that fun to play. It's more like the healer. That's why it has to be an A tier and cannot go in S tier. Why? Because a lot of stuff is in the traits and stuff, in the utility skills that is just missing in that regard. It's just a healer, that's it. And the most important part here is that it's only as fun because the core warrior traits are as fun. The tactics, discipline, they make this build like work and very fun. If you like would not have those traits or they would not be as fun, then Paragon would like go into D tier. I'm not joking. We really need those traits, and only with the core traits of warrior, Paragon gets to this level. So, I mean, that's the game, you know, you take your traits that fit, so that's why it's an A tier. But I have to say, Paragon on its own in a vacuum misses some stuff exactly like Conduit, but it has the core traits that carry it, so I think it's an A tier for me. That's why I think it's here. Then lastly, for the heavy armor classes, we have Luminary. Luminary for me is a spec that was in the beta somewhat lackluster. Definitely like with Conduit together. And they fixed it. They fixed it. Luminary, in my opinion, that might be my second hot take here. Luminary, for me, to play it is S tier. It is very strong right now. It's probably, that's one of the reasons why it's an S tier. But how it feels with the Forge, with the like mechanics, with the you can play it as a DPS, you can play it as a healer, you can play it as a hybrid. It's so flexible, has very cool mechanics with the Light Order, with the armaments, with the just swapping and like thinking about the second protection buff that you can provide. It's very fun in my opinion. I was really surprised. I think it's not like top of S tier, I would definitely say that, but it's surprisingly fun. I'm really surprised. It lets Core Guardian shine in a way that a elite spec should buff a core spec up. So I think it's definitely completely different than Firebrand. And it feels like a Core Guardian with a completely different mechanic added on top. It feels like a mix between a Core Guardian meets a Holosmith. And that's, some people really like that. I can understand that some people hate this playstyle and really don't like this, but I personally think this mechanic of being like swapping in the Forge, having some utility depending on what you need, damage, heal, blocks, everything in there, and swapping back out and being like very active and flexible, I think that's amazing. That's why it's for me low S tier. Yeah, I might be like crazy here, but I think so, yeah. So the changes to it make it really, really fun. That might be a really hot take. I'm aware of that. Let's go to the light armor classes, and I have to say probably the light armor classes are also somewhat hot takes in there. Let's start with Evoker. I think Evoker is very, very fun. I had a blast with it, probably as well because it's like completely broken. It's completely like fire specialized Evoker, specifically in PvE, is completely broken and you have just fun because the damage numbers are that high. But also the build crafting, the theory crafting with the traits and the familiars. You have so much flexibility. For me, it's an easy S tier. I really enjoy Evoker. I think it still lacks some kind of like, some of the traits are a little bit lackluster, but in general, like the gameplay loop is so fun. It's very spammy. I like this like snappy gameplay of like casting spells, casting more spells and resetting spells and stuff like that. I really enjoy that. For me, Evoker is very fun to play. It's not a pet spec, and that's the good part, because if it would have an active pet like a ranger or even like a mechanist, I would hate the spec, but it doesn't have an active pet. It's more like some kind of attack that you have. The pet just floats around in that regard to familiar. It's just like a animation. It doesn't really have any other thing in the world. And that's good. So that's why it's an S tier. As soon as it would have a pet, for me, the AI in Guild Wars 2 is horrible, so I would put it in A tier probably only because I hate that. But in Guild Wars 2, the familiar is not a pet, therefore it's really, really good. S tier. Next up, we have Troubadour. Troubadour, I really like Mesmer, as you can see. Like all the other Mesmer elite specs are very high rated. Troubadour for me is a spec that feels not like as unique in terms of like the gameplay loop as, for example, like Mirage, I would say. Mirage is very unique with the dodge alteration. However, Troubadour is a spec that is surprisingly strong right now, and because of the strongness, it's carrying it in a high spec because it's very fun. If it would be weak, I don't like cast times on my shatters. I always mention that. That's why Virtuoso is a little bit lower as well. I personally think for me Troubadour is an A tier, high A tier spec, because the thing is that Troubadour is very fun to play around in all situations. You can play a DPS Troubadour, you can play a hybrid, you can play a full support. Everything works. You have distortion share. You feel so flexible and powerful. You are not as flexible in some circumstances as Necromancer as a healer, but the output, the raw numbers are there, and that's why it's fun. And I have to say the spec design by itself is for me not S tier, it's A tier. And that's why it's an A tier. Even though the numbers itself in a power level, you always have to put it in S tier. But like I said, this is not about strength, this is about fun. So A tier for me it is. And lastly, we have Ritualist. Oh boy, Ritualist. Ritualist is a spec that is designed for people that love minions, pets and stuff like that. And I mentioned it with Evoker. I don't like pets in Guild Wars 2. So I'm a little bit on the fence. Ritualist is perfect for people that like this minion Mancer playstyle. And they buffed it like crazy. It's really, really strong right now. Really fun to play as well. I have to admit this, even as a minion, like not enjoyer, let's say it like that, not as drastic. But even me has to like really say this is fun. It's really fun. This shroud is very snappy. The attacks, the weapon spells feel surprisingly impactful, even though it's just like a instant cast buff, nothing like crazy that looks cool, but it's good. It's really fun to play, and I personally, as a minion, not enjoyer, would put it in like A tier. Yeah. Even though I would personally say, like, if it would be like a spec that is focused solely on minions, I have to put it in B tier. I think Ritualist for me is an A tier as well. So I think A tier for people that like minions, even S tier probably. It's really fun. It's really fun to play. So what would I say? Would I change something looking into stuff here? I mean, I think like B tier is probably quite correct. I think S tier looks also quite correct. You could make some splits in A tier, to be honest. You could make an A+ tier and change some stuff up that you would promote here. That is like a little bit better than the others. But like I said, it's very hard to judge for me. You know, in some situations, I really like Virtuoso, for example. Or I really like Paragon. But as soon as you change the situation, so for example, Virtuoso in PvE, I love. But as soon as I go into competitive modes, I hate it. And the same goes, for example, for like I don't know, like Ritualist. I think Ritualist in PvE is very fun to play. I think it's also quite fun to play in PvP, but playing against it is horrible. It's very, very unfun. So stuff like that. So I think the A tier is for me the thing where I like the spec, but it has like niches where it's good, where it's not fun and stuff like that. And S tier is always fun, and B tier is like rarely like really fun design spec. And like baseline is like, just like I said, the baseline, everyone has a different opinion on that, hard to rate. So this is my tier list. I think I'll stand to that. Let me know your takes on that, and I will be excited to see what you have to say. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks again to all my dear supporters. If you want to see more build guides and more tier lists, be sure to subscribe. If you like this specific tier list, be sure to leave a like. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.